welcome to the Budget Finance Committee meeting for the City of Franklin for May the 13th. The first item on the agenda is call to order, and I'll need a roll call vote on the call to order. Alderman Peterson, are you here?
Here.
Alderman Shore, are you here?
I'm here.
Alderman Speedy, are you here?
Here.
And the chair is here. The second item on the agenda is approval of minutes and the consideration of approval of minutes for the April 8th, 2021 Budget and Finance Committee. Hope everyone's had a chance to read those. Any corrections, deletions? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Proper motion to a second.
Second.
Let's do a roll call vote on that also. Alderman Peterson, how do you vote?
Yes.
Alderman Shore, how do you vote?
Yes.
Alderman Speedy?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes to that. Item 2, consideration of resolution 2021-87, resolution for the City of Franklin Employee Pension Plan, providing a cost of living adjustment to the monthly benefit for retired recipients effective July 2021. Christine, I think that's your item. You're up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This resolution is brought annually. It is a calculation of the change in the March Consumer Price Index between the current year and the previous year. The rate for the cost of living increase for our closed pension plan will be 1.65%, which is effective in July with our July payment. In recent year, the last 2 years, it's been approximately 2%. It's just slightly less than that, but we do that calculation annually and bring that to the board for consideration.
Any questions of Christine on the pension increase, pension payments increase? If not, I'll entertain a motion. And this will be to present this to the full board for
Yes, sir.
approval, but the motion will come from this committee as a recommendation to the full board then. I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Proper motion?
Second.
Second. Let's do a roll call vote on this also. Alderman Peterson, how do you vote?
Yes.
Alderman Shore, how do you vote?
Yes.
Alderman Speedy, how do you vote?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes on this. Let's go to item 3, which is consideration of ordinance 2021-14, an ordinance to amend the budget of the City of Franklin for fiscal year 2020-2021. Eric, you're first on the list of presenters on that. Do you want?
I'd be glad to hand that off to Michael Walters
Michael?
to walk you through that.
All right.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, good afternoon. Today marks the end of your work and our work on the 2022 budget, but before Eric presents that, we need to have some unfinished business to attend to on the 2021 budget. Ordinance 2021-14 is an amendment which has 3 components. The first are what we call or refer to as simply budget balancing actions. The second are year-end interfund cleanups, and the third are year-end cash balance contingencies. Those are the if necessary and not to exceed elements which are necessary to bring operational funds in compliance with state regulations. So the first amendment, this will take a few minutes to explain, are the budget balancing actions. We will start with the general fund. Revenues and expenses will be increasing by $4.2 million. Revenues are increasing $3.5 million for the recognition of local option sales tax collections. If you recall, we built this budget assuming a very conservative and worsening economic situation that never quite materialized. And Eric will explain that further as we look at the 22 budget. But we have not seen the erosion and the predicted 10% sales tax drop that we built into this budget. And so we are recommending the increase of $3.5 million from the budget side for local option sales tax in fiscal 21. And the second is the recognition of $1.2 million in federal reimbursement for COVID-19 expenses. This is an allocation which we incurred these expenses both in fiscal 20 and 21, had to submit the reimbursements to the federal government and have received it all in fiscal 21, and this simply recognizes that revenue. On the expense side, there are several components making up the increase of $4.2 million. The first is to ensure that the budgets can simply accommodate expenses. This keeps departmental budgets in line. There are two main components of this. Number one are vacancy adjustments. If you recall, we build in a 3.5% vacancy rate into all departmental budgets. If departments did not have vacancies at the end of the year, they would not have sufficient funds in their personnel budget to cover the ongoing costs. So this plugs those holes where they appeared. The second are directly related to COVID-19 expenses, especially in fire and in the facilities department, where there was overtime and lots of additional charges due to ongoing pandemic response. The second, $1.27 million, is for prepayment of liabilities. We are recommending the transfer of $1 million into the city's pension fund to cover various liabilities in fiscal 21 and 22, as well as $269,000 for police, emergency service, and IT equipment. Police department is to replace some security cameras, the IT department is to replace a server, and emergency service is to purchase a series of dual carrier phones, which would allow us to maintain communication for important and vital functions of the city in case you have an incident similar to what happened as a result of the Christmas bombing in Nashville, where a carrier could be knocked out. We would have the ability with these phones to switch to a second carrier. There are $905,000 worth of what we call delayed items from fiscal 20. In this case, police cruisers, which we budgeted in fiscal 20, but did not actually take receipt of until fiscal 21. Thus, the expense is accounted for in fiscal 21. We have year-end cash contingency transfers, which I'll explain in a moment. That's Amendment 3 to the Sanitation Fund. And finally, $768,000 for continued work on approved CIP projects, namely the Long Lane Overpass, McEwen Phase 5, and the West Main Bridge Widening Project. In other funds, we have $100,000 of increased expenses as a transfer to cover ongoing design costs of Jordan Road. That's between Aspen Grove and Mallory Lane. $1.494 million for the final costs of Fire Station 7 and outfitting, both construction and outfitting. $575,000 of additional expenses for the Hotel Motel Fund. $75,000 of that are transferred to the Capital Projects Fund for the Greenway project, which you saw some renderings of on Tuesday night between Harlansdale Farm and Chestnut Bend. And roughly $500,000 to cover anticipated losses incurred by the Cool Springs Conference Center in fiscal 21. If you recall, we budget surpluses and we budget deficits in case they occur as a result within the Hotel Motel Fund of the Conference Center. And in order to keep the expense budget in balance, we are recommending $500,000 be that figure for 21. Parkland dedication has expenses increasing of $150,000 for transferring to the Capital Projects Fund to continue work on Bicentennial Park. This is part design and also covers the added expenses necessary for the demolition and clearing of the part of the barn that collapsed in winter. If you go past that structure today, you'll see that that work is underway. $313,000 in the CDBG fund for both revenues and expenses, recognizing federal COVID-19 relief funds targeted for local nonprofit and social service agencies through that program. Those are separate and distinct from any other COVID sources of funding we have, and you've already seen and approved some of those recommendations. Through the process of the year, this ensures that the budget can accommodate for those. And finally, $2.7 million in the Water Management Fund to cover various overages in the 9 divisions. Primarily, this pertains to rate-funded capital. If you recall in Amendment 1, we lowered the budget rate-funded capital by about $4 million. This is actually increasing it part of the way back to cover some of those costs which were incurred for some of those projects. Amendment 2 is simple interfund cleanups as we're referring them. This is making sure that the exact amount necessary to charge off to the Road Impact Fund and Hotel Motel funds to cover debt service payments are correct at year end. $68,593 reduction of what the Road Impact Fund is transferring to debt service, and $3,800 increasing for the Hotel Motel Fund to debt service. And $21,620 of increased transfers from the Sanitation Fund, Stormwater, and Water Management Fund to the General Fund to cover indirect costs. If you recall, indirect costs are those expenses which are provided and services provided for the general fund. So water does not have its own IT department. Water does not have its own city administrator. Water does not have its own human resources department, et cetera, et cetera. This is the transfer of funds into the general fund to cover the estimated costs and services provided by the general fund to those funds. And finally, Amendment 3 is to cover year-end cash contingencies. The state of Tennessee requires that operational funds have both positive cash balances and 1 month's worth of fund balance in those funds at year-end. The sanitation fund, as we've talked about for many years, is working very hard to be a self-sustaining fund. But as with most funds, it of course bills in arrears. And so the ability to get that money in and have it timely, we have a 60-day close. However, the state does not recognize that in terms of cash balance. And we must make sure that there's a positive cash balance in that fund as of June 30. So we're recommending $750,000 be transferred from the general fund to the sanitation fund if necessary. Now, it's certainly possible that that will not be necessary. We have done this for many years to sanitation and to the transit fund. Transit is in good shape this year because of all of the federal money that it has received through various COVID relief packages. So there's not a recommendation in that fund. With that, Mr. Chairman, I'm happy to stand for any questions.
A quick question, Clyde, if I may. Does that money, will you readjust after you close in 60 days and refund it if it's not needed?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
And we will only transfer the amount that would be necessary in the first place. And then second, the money would then be, would come back in a budget amendment at the beginning of fiscal '22.
Okay, all right.
Yep.
Let me get a motion to approve the ordinance, and then, because I'm sure there'll be some additional questions that somebody would want to ask also. So I'll entertain a motion to approve
To recommend
ordinance
approval.
2021-15.
To recommend approval to the.
Proper motion,
full
to a
board of
second?
Mayor
second.
Doherty.
Any questions from any committee member on what has been covered so far? I guess I don't have a question necessarily, other than we know that we will weigh down on motel, hotel tax, and we will weigh down on the conference center. And it's a little, maybe not confusing, but a little bit questioning as to how we made some of that up. Do you, when we went over this right here, did we cover the losses on the hotel motel tax and any of, I'm looking for that. Did I miss that?
So the recommendation of this ordinance is to provide $500,000 to cover fiscal '21 potential losses of the conference center. Through the month of February or March, we're around $300,000 in losses. But I think that's the end of February number. So there's still about a third of the year that we're trying to account for. We think $500,000 will more than cover it. We do have, for the first time, a budgeted coverage in fiscal '22 as well. We are recommending the fiscal '22 budget that $150,000 be allocated to cover potential losses as things improve. And yeah, and as Christine just said, that would be a budgeted use of fund balance in both years.
And what are we, okay, and the second thing, what are we doing as far as the shed at the Bicentennial? We just tearing it down and
The
building something
portion
back
that
on it?
collapsed, the small segment that did is being removed.
Just removed?
Yeah, just that portion is being removed, and then ultimately, using that shed or that as a pavilion as part of the Bicentennial Park development is still anticipated.
Okay.
We'll do some things to make that more usable and shored up as well.
So this is totally unrelated, but the other day I drove by there and I saw kids on skateboards in and around that. We need to make sure the police go by there
Yeah,
often enough
yeah.
to get them out. We don't want that thing collapsing.
Yeah,
So
it's
just,
it is a.
I know it's a continually
It's
difficult
tempting. I know.
issue.
Yes, it
So
is. Yeah.
I'm not blaming anybody, I just thought I'd bring that to somebody's attention.
Any other questions of Michael from any other committee member? We do have a motion and a second. Then if there's no other questions, let's vote on this item. Alderman Peterson, how do you vote?
Yes.
Alderman Shore, how do you vote?
Yes?
Alderman Speedy, how do you vote? Yes. And the chair votes yes on this. Okay, let's go to item 4, consideration of ordinance 2021-15, an ordinance of the city of Franklin adopting the budget for fiscal year 2021-2022, providing an effective date. Eric?
I will take you through this. This one won't move quite as quickly as the last two items, but we'll move through it as quickly as we can. And I've got about 30 slides I'll walk through. This presentation itself is available online. If you go to the city website, we've got it already posted there for you to refer to or for the public to see. The timeline for your adoption of this budget, we would ask you in this meeting to move it on to the full board. We'll take first reading at the May 25th meeting, and then public hearing August 8th, and third and final vote on the June 22nd meeting. So I'll walk through these components as you see on the summary or the outline on the slide, and give you a sense of what the 2022 budget is all about. We've worked on it several months in this meeting, hearing each department present their needs and their ideas, and have brought it together into one package here for the fiscal 22 budget. One of the things that emerged as we went through a very unusual year in the last 12 to 16 months has been the challenges that we've faced. But this is a component of what I shared with you all back in the fall, which is something that emerged in our discussion, which is how do we build a stronger Franklin out of these unprecedented times? And really came to a focus on 4 areas, 4 words that start with P. The pandemic continues to be a challenge, but is moving into next phases, and we will continue to follow the guidance of experts in medical, public health, and scientific fields that guide our response. So we know we're not all the way through it, but we certainly are we hope, the final mile or two of the marathon. Our focus on people, both serving the people of our community, but the people on our city team, that we are mindful of how we support them and keep them strong so that they can serve the community well, but also a healthy community in terms of issues around diversity, equity, and inclusion emerged in the past year or two, to be intentional and thoughtful about that as well. Projects continue to be incredibly important as we build major infrastructure enhancements to maintain quality of life while also responding to the needs of one of the fastest growing cities in America. And then finally, the possibilities component, which is largely we think of in terms of financial capacity to sustain and support our operations, but is also the organizational capacity to serve our community as well. So an overview of some of the key elements of this budget and what we strive to provide in the budget we recommend today is that it does support a stronger Franklin, that we've come through a challenging time but are in a good position to be stronger and better as we move forward, that we maintain the high quality of services our citizens rely on in all that we do, that we preserve capacity to respond to the needs that we have now but we have in the future to maintain a great quality of life and to serve our community well, and that we are ultimately investing in and planning for a strong, viable future. So let's hit the high-level numbers. The all-funds budget is at $166.8 million, and that is a 1.7% increase from the current fiscal 21 budget. The general fund itself is at $84.5 million of that total. That is a 9.8% increase compared to the current budget. I'll remind you all that a year ago when we presented this budget, you had budgets that were reduced 10% in all funds and 10% in the general fund. We recovered a portion of that with some mid-year budget amendments, but this reflects really a full operational budget returning closer to normal. And also, especially in the general fund, as you see here, we've got $4.2 million of one-time COVID recovery funds coming into those funds from state and federal sources. So let's hit some highlights of the budget itself. It is a balanced budget. It complies with your policies related to fund balance and debt capacity. Essential services are maintained, if not enhanced, throughout the budget. And we are in a revaluation year. So our property tax rate you see on the screen, which is the current rate at just under 42 cents per $100 of assessed valuation, will be reduced. In fact, within the last hour, Christine has been in conversations with the county, and we're still looking at and validating those numbers, but we expect it to be in the 32 to 33 cent range of a reduced rate based on the valuation. So we're still pulling the same dollar amount, but with the increased valuations across properties, that our tax rate
You're
can
not going to
be
say what
reduced.
the mayor of Nashville said?
I am not going to say
Lower
that,
the
no. But your tax rate is going down. Here's the broader, really interesting number. The county-wide assessed valuation is now at 64 billion. In 2011, 10 years ago, it was at 32 billion. So it took us close to 220 years to get the first 32 billion. We got the next 32 billion in 10 years.
10 years.
In terms of assessed valuation. So that speaks strongly of the amount of activity, the level of investment we have seen over the last 10 years.
So Eric, what does 1 cent generate?
What's 1 cent, Christine or Michael? Just around
Do you remember?
800,000? Yeah.
We're still waiting on schedules. We were talking back of the envelope an hour ago, but 700 to 800,000. Well, the last part to the process we're working on now is actually, pulling apart what was new growth in the last year and what was revaluation. So as soon as we get that, what 1 cent is worth, we're going to give that to Eric to share with the board.
So, but even at that, 1 cent in that or 1 cent in the new is still going to generate the same amount unless we change something.
Well, one
cent
cent's going to be more
more, yes.
valuable
Yeah.
than it was before. That's why the rate's going down.
Rate's going down.
So
It's going to be more valuable, but it doesn't generate any more.
The total
It doesn't, the
amount.
total amount, it
Total
doesn't
is-
generate anymore.
The total rate will generate the same amount.
Same amount.
But the 1
per
cent-
penny will go up.
Okay.
yes,
Well, let me ask, because I understood that the entire county was going up the 32%, but I failed to ask at the time whenever that was said to me, whether that meant that the city of Franklin was going to be increasing at the same rate that the entire county was.
Increasing.
not necessarily.
That's what
There's
I
the
wondered.
countywide is 32%, but there are different segments within the county. And in fact, within the city of Franklin, the county assigns 2 different areas that we add together to get the city of Franklin. So, and then of course, all the different cities and different jurisdictions within the county as well. So, once the county assessor gets that all released, then you can see changes within these different segments that he is valuing. And there can be differences in growth percentages between these different areas.
Well, just the quick math is our valuation went up 25%. Because we went from 42 to 32.
Yeah.
So that's just,
Oh,
so that's the valuation went up that much to reduce it that much, basically, isn't that correct?
That's
Well, the,
rough number.
but see, those are.
Yeah, yeah,
rough
no,
numbers.
I'm
Yeah.
just, I'm
but
just
the other piece of
throwing that
the other piece of the calculation, I'm sorry, is that the growth is pulled out. And so when we have the 32% countywide, that is revaluation and growth. And so to do the calculation for the certified rate,
Sure, sure.
the property assessor has to has to identify what's growth and what's just
Correct.
revaluation.
That makes sense.
So that's why you can't just take the same,
Yeah.
take the
That
numbers
makes
and back
sense. Good
into
point.
it. You
I
have
retract
to-
what I said.
I'm sorry.
It's a stew is what it is.
I did not say that.
I'm sorry to delve into
understand-
the math, but it's a lot of math to it.
I also understand that property owners may get their postcards maybe tomorrow to say,
You're going to see them
What
soon.
you-
Oh, that's
And I
scary.
believe it's available online. If you want to
yeah,
go
that's right,
look your
that's what I
property
heard
up,
too.
you can do that today.
Available online already,
Yeah.
It is
So,
online.
but I don't know how to get to it.
well, if that's easy, you go to the property assessor,
No, but what I'm saying is, on our GIS map, you can look,
Oh.
but just by but that's at the current evaluation, I'm assuming.
So,
yeah.
so from a public communication standpoint, we need to get way out in front of this. Because, I mean, really, because people are gonna see that,
Yeah,
and they're gonna say, you know, my house went up 25%. They're
30.
gonna automatically assume that their taxes are going up 25%. So,
Not
you
from
know,
the city of Franklin, they won't.
no, but they're going to assume that.
Right, right.
So I would say Melissa and our communications people need to drive that fact home really hard, or you all gonna get besieged by phone calls.
Yeah.
And everybody just needs to know, by state law, you know that, but by state law, we have to receive the same amount of income from after evaluation as we did before the valuation. So,
unless we decide to.
unless we decide
up
to
that.
raise something else,
Exactly,
that's correct. But
But you
you're
bring
right.
it down and then you decide
then
if you want to do
yeah,
anything
and then,
else.
then a penny's worth more than what it was before,
Right.
but anyway. But I don't think we should just sit and let that, I think
Yeah,
we really need to.
we will
Good
make sure
point.
that's
I
clear.
mean, just, especially if they're gonna get their cards tomorrow or the next day.
Yeah.
I mean, this isn't something we should wait till people call. We should say, you're gonna probably get a reevaluation, and here's what it is, and here's what the city's gonna do. We haven't done it yet, but by law, you have to do X. So I just think we ought to get out in front of that.
And,
It
and
has
it,
been posted online, so I
Yes.
see my new market appraisal on my house.
Oh, you did? You saw it?
It's there, yeah.
oh, okay, okay.
So if you go to the county property assessor's website, you can go on and look at your property.
I would, but my computer died because I haven't charged it.
Well, I tried to look at it real fast, but I couldn't, I couldn't
You
find
need
it.
a hard copy?
I got this, I do have that, so.
We got you.
Well,
you covered.
and let's also say that this is only through the end of the calendar year 2020. In other words, anything that's sold this year already is not included in their reassessment numbers.
Yeah, it's to December 31st, 2020, I think. is-
That's right,
Yes,
exactly,
right.
exactly.
Yes, right.
So, if, you know, we've had some people that have sold their houses since then.
Right, right.
Eric?
I'll jump back
Let's
in.
go back.
Sorry.
No, it's an
This is
important
important,
topic, and
yeah.
it's something that, you know, it's been 5 years since the revaluation has taken place, and we will certainly hit that messaging so people understand that process. It can be confusing. Next element talks about our staffing adjustments within this budget. You may remember a year ago, we basically unfunded about 27 positions in the general fund. We restored a handful of those at mid-year with our budget amendment. And then in this budget, we restore 7 of those, as well as adding 7 new positions. The 7 new positions create an urban street tree crew that includes 4 individuals between our Parks Department and an inspector in Building and Neighborhood Services. It also has a trail maintenance position as we've expanded trails and the need to maintain those. We also have a street maintenance position as well that's associated with the Mac Hatcher extension that will open up later this year, as well as a senior position that is an emergency manager, so for emergency management and emergency response coordination within our organization. And the 7 restored positions really go across 6 different positions, so they're sprinkled evenly across a number of different aspects of our operations. So let's look at what we're doing by way of pay adjustments for our team members this year. We are recommending a return to our approach on pay adjustments that we used pre-COVID for at least 3 years prior to COVID. Of course, that had to be held off on last year. But this would have a base pay increase for our team members of 2.5%, and then a performance-based additional element of that is up to another 2.5%. So depending on the performance of our team members in this past year, 2-year segment, since we weren't able to make adjustments last year on performance, this would allow us to make some additional base pay increases, both a blend of a general increase and performance-based increase. The other element that is unique to this year, and also a recognition of the challenges of the past year and some of the funding opportunity we have with the one-time dollars coming in, is an opportunity to provide a $1,000 one-time pay supplement to full-time and permanent part-time city team members. So that is also included in this budget. We are able to hold the line again this year on our health insurance premiums, and glad to do that. Still feel like we are adequately funding it in the formula that we have laid out over several years with our team, but are able to hold the line on that again this year. We do have a new approach encompassed in this budget, which is working with an outside fleet management partner to handle consumer vehicles for our team, sedans, SUVs, pickup trucks. And we feel that that will provide us a newer, more highly functioning fleet at a more affordable, more effective approach to it. So we're excited to bring that forward. It's something we've looked at for a few years and now are incorporating it in the budget. There are a few fee adjustments recommended in this budget. There is an adjustment the first time in 3 years within our sanitation, our residential trash and recycling service. $1.50, moving it from $19 a month to $20.50 a month. There is a 5% increase in the stormwater utility rate. This is the first increase since the stormwater fee was created in 2004. It's a fairly modest increase. That 5% equates to between $1.64 and $2.63 for the entire year to our residential customers, but is still important as we keep that fund whole and providing maintenance support for stormwater functions for the 5-year window that we've looked at. And then there is a planned water and sewer rate increase in the 3% range, 2.9 in water, 3% in sewer. The specifics of an updated 5-year rate plan will be coming to you in the next month or so. So we do expect it, though, to be in that range. So there may be slight adjustments based on what that rate study, that cost of service study shows us. All right, so let's turn to the general fund. Next couple charts just give you a breakdown of first where the money is coming from. And again, it is the story of sales tax is our primary revenue source at over 50%, 53.4% here. And then you see state shared revenue, which is largely sales tax coming back from the state to the cities based on population. The property tax that is remaining after we pay our debt obligations comes to support general fund obligations and then operations. And then you see the rest is a combination of fees, franchise fees, utility franchises, business licenses, permits, et cetera. So to break it down a different way, and we've looked at this the last several years this way, but it's interesting when you blend the consumption tax components is nearly 3/4 of our budget, which is great when the economy's doing well, but when you hit a rough patch, that is the first place that people restrict spending. And that is in part why we have a strong reserve in place to help us maintain if we hit an economic downturn like we've seen in the last year. And that saw us through, and in fact, we had planned to use a significant component of the reserve to see us through, and we're fortunate that we did not have to because sales tax did not decline nearly at the level we feared a year ago. So when you look at where we spend the money, let's look at the functional components. Again, roughly half in the public safety realm, around 46%. You look at the other components, economic and community development, around 11%, our public works function, also around 15, 16%, and then you see some general and administrative components in there as well. When you look at it by the categories of expenditures, as we always say, we are in the people business. We serve the people of the community through the people on our city team, and that's around 71% of the expenditures in the general fund go to wages and benefits. The other large component, 25%, is operational support, just contracts, materials, et cetera, that help support us. And then capital equipment in this budget is right around $3.7 million. So this next chart is just a bar chart showing you our performance over time. You see how we've been able to build fund balance through each of the last several years, even in the midst of facing the downturn related to the pandemic. We still were able to hold our own in terms of our fund balance. And you see us projecting the end of this current fiscal year at just under $58 million at $57.7 million. And again, that puts us in a really good place in terms of providing the ability to absorb any impacts. And also, as you know, we plan to use anything over 45% as a funding source for our capital investment projects as well. So in summary, when you look at the general fund, we weathered the challenges of the pandemic and the associated downturn in the economy very, very well. Our team, I'm really proud of how our team performed. They showed resilience, they adapted. We went within really the blink of an eye, it seemed, to a lot of virtual meetings and remote work, and our team still delivered very well for the community. We've continued to move forward on high priority projects. You see the cones and the building activity that's going on vital projects, be it on roads or in parks or other locations in our wastewater treatment plant, which is about a year away from opening. That progress continues. And as I said, our reserves, our capacity is well positioned for the future. So this next chart, we'll go through some details in the next few slides that talk about these primary revenue sources, but this shows you the projections of revenues compared to last couple prior years and where we're coming out. You see significant growth in sales tax and state shared tax. You see an unusual blip up in grants. That reflects the one-time money that's coming from state and federal sources, and we'll talk about those in a little more detail in the next few slides. Again, sales tax continues to be the driver from a revenue standpoint. 53% plus of our general fund is in that component. That is a almost 18% increase over the current budget. And that's a combination of the concern we had and the actual reduction we put in that revenue source. And again, that did not actually happen, and we're grateful for that. We have actually seen year-over-year growth in the current fiscal year, which is great. But we also have the local option sales tax that was passed by voters in 2018. And you may remember the city of Franklin, along with the other municipalities in Williamson County, pledged our half of that local sales tax to go entirely to public education for that first 3 years. The normal split of local option sales tax is 50% goes to public education, the other 50% goes to the city within which it was generated. And we dedicated our half of that additional 0.5% of sales tax to Williamson County Public Schools for that 3-year period, and that came to an end April 1st of 2021. So we now have that additional revenue source coming into play. Our original commitment had been for that to be a 50-50. Lots of 50-50s going on, but that 50% of that new sales tax or that additional sales tax layer would go to operations, and the other 50% helps us support our capital investment program. A year ago, I expressed doubt that we'd be able to do that first year because of the concern we had about where we'd be economically. And the reality is we're able to go to that original plan, and we're glad for that as well. So it helps keep us moving in terms of supporting vital projects. The next slide shows you our property tax, sales tax balance compared to one another. It's roughly a 2-to-1 ratio, property tax to sales tax. That had started to inch up a little bit, but with those additional sales tax dollars flowing into this budget, you see it returned to pretty close to a 2-to-1 ratio, sales tax to property tax.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Maybe you explain it, and I've missed it. Why did property tax go down in 2020 over 2019?
Well, that is what we get into the 2020 versus 20, I'm trying to look at what year.
2019, it was 9.3 million, and actual
Okay,
2020
yeah, that's reflective of the debt service.
Yeah.
So the total number, if you look at this chart, you'll see, if you're looking at
like
2020.
I wish I could see that.
Yeah, it's hard to see, but say it's around 21 million that comes in total property tax. We pay the general obligation debt first, and then what's remaining comes to the general fund
Oh,
for
okay.
operations.
Okay, all
So
right.
that's a function of
I get it.
a blip up in the debt service,
Okay.
the general obligation
That's fine. Thank you.
component. All right, so some of the other revenue sources, this is just some quick hits, and we'll touch on a couple of these in a little more detail. But again, intergovernmental has grown significantly year to year, and that's a reflection of not nearly the decrease that we had feared a year ago. And again, that is largely state collected sales tax coming back to municipalities based on their property or their population. The property tax, you see the component there. There's a small decrease due to the debt service component. And you may remember we did a restructuring and refunding related to the debt we issued for the police headquarters construction. And essentially in that restructuring, we moved the payment of principal up. We started paying principal on that debt sooner. We were retiring the entire debt issues earlier, and it saves us around $3 million in borrowing costs collectively from that, and the board approved that a little over a year ago. So that does, though, move up some debt service a little earlier than we had originally planned. So that's why the amount of property tax revenue entering the funding of general fund operations is a little less this year. Alcohol tax, maybe not that surprising, went up about 5% in the last year, so that is reflected here as well. Building permits, we did see a little bit of decrease from what we had projected at one point, but we're being conservative in what we see in activity or project out in activity in the coming year. We do try to assess that based on what we see entering the pipeline, and we think that's a conservative number, but a good one from a planning standpoint. And then franchise fees essentially flat, other revenues pretty stable. The next couple slides gives you more of a detailed breakdown on the one-time revenue that's entering into our budget this year, and that you may see in a couple more budgets going forward. The state of Tennessee in their fiscal 22 budget provided for $100 million of funding for assistance to local governments. That equates to a share for Franklin of about $900,000. These funds are entirely programmed in our fiscal 22 budget as proposed and help support some public safety needs. Specifically, we deferred some police cruiser replacements a year ago. It helps us with that. Also helps us upgrade one of our fire towers to an advanced life support apparatus. So that's how we plan to target those dollars. The bigger component is the funding that's coming from the federal government. In March of this year, the Congress approved and the President signed the American Recovery Plan into place. And a component of that is direct funding, not through the state, not through the county, but direct funding to local governments. And for that, and with that calculation, the city of Franklin will receive just over $9 million of resources. We'll get that in two components, essentially, 50-50. We expect about $4.5 million to come anytime now, sometime in May. I signed a contract related to that, or an agreement related to that, just a day or two ago, and so we expect that to arrive shortly. And then the second half of that $4.5 million, or second shot of $4.5 million, will arrive sometime in the next 12 months. Those funds, and guidance and direction on how those should be allocated is still being generated. So we've made our best guess on how to allocate that in this budget based on what we saw in the act and guidance we've gotten thus far. But these funds must be fully utilized by the end of 2024, calendar year 2024. So for this year, this slide gives you a sense of where we want to use about $3.3 million of that that $9 million. We want to offset some revenue shortfalls. Michael referred to it in the budget amendment that we saw in the hotel motel tax. That'll help us fund projects that have been targeted from that fund, but also help us with supporting promotion of tourism and the local hospitality industry that were among the hardest hit in the pandemic. Help us work with the Convention and Visitors Bureau to support their efforts to promote that during this recovery time. Also, revenue shortfalls that we experienced in the street aid fund, we can offset those there. That helps us with our neighborhood street and sidewalk maintenance program. And then we did speak about earlier the $1,000 pay supplement to our essential workers, our full-time and permanent part-time folks, that is also an eligible use of those dollars in this as well. And then we'd like to also use this in this year and fiscal '22 and in each of probably the next 2 years for water and sewer infrastructure, as we have aging water lines, sewer lines in our older neighborhoods, that is an ongoing area, and this is a great place to target that. And one of the areas of emphasis in the bill was water and sewer infrastructure.
Okay, I wondered about that because since they are technically enterprise funds, but so you're saying that
That
was
is
something-
specifically singled out as an infrastructure investment that's encouraged. Again, we're still getting guidance, but seems like a good place to target at least a portion of this money. Helps us with a need in the community, gets that work done, which is good for the local economy as well, and is a good help to support our ratepayers as well. So it seems like a good balance there. There you see, the next slide just gives you a summary of our, where we are with our fund balance at the end of the year. General fund balance, again, very strong position, $57.1 million is projected at the end of the current fiscal year, and then with a balanced budget, that would be projected a year from now as well. And that compared to the budget that's being proposed is around a 67.6%. Your policy's at 33%, so you're about doubling your minimum threshold. And again, a portion of that money is targeted to be used to support capital projects. This next table just gives you a sense of where those dollars are spent by our different functions in public safety, governance, finance administration, community and economic development, public works. That's that pie chart that we showed you, and then the components also that are supported in the broader categories, expenditure categories of personnel, operations, and capital. Our general fund pension fund, again, is a blend of our closed local pension fund that we have in place, and then the ongoing Tennessee Consolidated Retirement System component that employees are also in. Collectively, we're seeing about a 5% increase in this year's budget to support pension. Again, we're at a very strong position where that, in terms of how that's funded. And when you look at that as a component of payroll, it's just under 13%. And you saw in the budget amendment, we always look for an opportunity to bolster that fund and feel like we've been able to do that. We'll be able to do that as we close out this year. One of the components that's also carried in the budget is the appropriations to outside entities. We reduced those 10% a year ago as well. This budget does restore those to the fiscal year 20 levels for our long-term partners in terms of outside agencies. We did add 2 new agencies that have made requests. The Davis House, which is a partner to the city, especially to our police department, in working very challenging cases related to families and children impacted by abuse situations. They are a great partner, and we would provide support there. There's also Gilda's Club, which is a cancer support group. They'd also put a request, and so we did put a modest amount of funding to partner with them in terms of the support they provide to Franklin families. All right, this is just a summary of all the different funds. A great little reference for you if you want to look at a fund. It's got the page where we've got the description and the basic components of what's going on. The next few slides, I'll hit some key highlights. Again, when you look at our all funds budget, it's $166.1 million. That's just a 1.7% increase. You see how that breaks out, personnel versus operations versus capital, and is pretty consistent with what we have seen in recent years. Let's go through the other key takeaways on some of the other funds. Stormwater, as we indicated, does have a recommended fee adjustment the first time since its creation 18 years ago, and that's at a budget of $2.8 million. As we've talked about, about a year ago we did sort of our own internal analysis, cost of service analysis. That really makes this an operational fund only. We won't really be funding significant capital projects. We've done a few of those. That's helped us draw down the fund balance and address some needs, but really on a go-forward basis, it's really going to be supportive of maintenance and operational activities which is the general original intent of that fund. In sanitation, again, we've got, we do have a $1.50 per month rate increase proposed, first one that we've had in three years. There is no fee increase, or no general fund support in this budget. There's a mistake there. One restored position, one new position. We are replacing 3 pieces of equipment, side loaders, and then also adding a side loader that will be funded by the facilities tax fund. Overall, the budget is about a 4.6% increase from 2021. One observation related to that fund we shared with you when we presented the departmental request. We've really done a lot to stretch our capacity through scheduling, through routing software, through greater automation. But we've probably maxed out a lot of that. So as more growth hits us, we are going to look to need to add more personnel and more equipment to help us do the work of a growing community. We've been able to do all those and not add a single person in 5 years in that department. So that's great, but we've probably maxed that out, quite frankly. So as we grow, we're going to need to see probably some more increases than we've seen the last few years because of that. Hotel motel was spoken about earlier as well. Took probably the largest hit of any fund compared to its size due to the pandemic. We are targeting some supplemental revenue offset or loss offsets in this budget. About $1.15 million is what we've planned. Again, that helps us with project funding, that helps us support efforts to promote tourism and the hospitality industry in our community. You do have debt service in that fund as we continue to move along with the debt associated with Harlansdale and Eastern Flank, and not too far in the distance to be able to retire that debt also. Our development funds remain very strong. Collectively, you've got a fund balance of in excess of $50 million between those 4 development funds, and remain a vital component of our capital investment funding area. We also have debt service paid through that to certain key components that are ongoing. Water and wastewater, again, that's just under $35 million total between water, sewer, and our reclaimed utility function, our collective water management utility. We had been in our 3rd year of a 5-year, but we are looking at updating the 5-year rate and rate plan so that we bring that to you. Again, we're projected at around a 3%. This budget does have your first payment of the state revolving loan fund of $100 million that has helped support the ongoing project at the water reclamation facility. And just think of it as like a mortgage on your house. You've got a 30-year state revolving loan fund for this significant investment, and this is year 1 of paying that back.
And so what's happened on the extra money that we were hoping to
Yeah.
get from them?
So, yeah, we can give you a quick update on that.
Sure,
We
please.
just had a meeting on that. Based on the availability within the fund, it appears we're going to get $10 million of the $30 million we'd submitted for. Basically, the program manager is looking at what's available and has somewhere around the $30 million total remaining to be programmed,
Okay.
and basically didn't want to give it all to one project and wanted to spread it out, especially to some smaller utilities. And based on the capacity and what's available, it looks to allocate $10 million to us. So we're going to need
Gonna have
to
to
fund
do
$20
$20.
million.
Yeah. Well,
and-
we're going to have to.
Yeah, we'll be coming back to you with that.
Loaning them.
Yeah,
$20
on what that looks like and how much borrowing that will be. We're going to reevaluate some of our other funding opportunities related to it, and we'll give you a plan. But that appears to be where we're going to end up. So, and you know, we would have loved to have gotten the remaining amount, but
Yeah.
we started out with, about 10 million total to begin with, and that grew to the 100, now 110 million. So we're well ahead of where we would have been had we had to fund it all through a water revenue bond. So that saves us minimum somewhere in the $20 to $30 million range, depending on what you would have gotten in the market for that $110 million. So we're still very grateful for that, but working through those arrangements, and you'll see something coming pretty quickly on that over the next couple months as we gear up to sell some level of water revenue bonds. So in summary, just this budget is reflective of just a challenging year, but an encouraging response to those challenges, and really puts us in a position to be a stronger community. You don't go through something like this individually or as a community and not be affected by it. And I think you say, what's that going to look like on the other end? Are we going to be stronger? Are we going to take better care of each other? Or are we going to be weaker and more divided? And I think we've really tried to be intentional about being stronger and being better able to support our community. And that's what we continue, that's the work that we'll continue to focus on as we move forward. You know, we have great capacity maintained to support our operations, to support the aggressive capital investment and infrastructure investments that we've planned through the Invest Franklin initiative that we started 5 years ago. Last time we did revaluation, we pledged 10 cents to deal with the needs of a growing community, and I'm proud that we've continued to move forward with that and invest in ways that are going to serve the community well. We end the year with a strong reserve position as well, as we talked about earlier. So I'll just end this with just a word of thanks to our team. This is a team effort. Every department, department directors, their key staff, labor over this budget that they submit to you and to our budget team, and we want to thank them for their work. I want to thank our finance team, especially thank Michael Walters-Young, who helps lead it, Angelique Franzoni, who has been a great resource in supporting departments, supporting Michael, supporting us. The assistant city administrators, our HR team, all play a vital role as we pull this together and ultimately make a recommended budget to you. So I'll stop there. That's my presentation for this year. Glad to take any questions you have or address any concerns. I would just ask at the end of that if you would take an action to advance this to the full board for first reading on May 25th.
Well, let's get a motion to that effect, and then if there's any questions, certainly feel free. We've got the time to ask those questions. I entertain a motion to that effect,
That we recommend
that we
approval to
recommend
the,
this to the full board.
so moved.
I'll second.
Proper motion and a second. Any questions of Eric on the presentation?
Just one quick question. How many full-time and part-time employees do we have?
What's our total number?
I was going to say, yeah.
On page 66 of your budget document.
Oh, I'm sorry I missed that.
There's only 468 pages in the document.
Yeah, that's right.
I don't know how you missed it. We have 754 budgeted full-time employees in fiscal '22. We have 763 total authorized. There are still 9 unbudgeted positions. And I think we have roughly between 30 and 35 part-time positions throughout the organization. A lot of those, probably a good third of those are going to be your school patrol, and then other part-time positions.
Got it.
So-
That's good. Clyde, one more,
Go ahead.
and then I'll be quiet. I'm gonna go back to what I said earlier about public awareness and what we're doing. I think it should be in headlines that we passed a budget that had no tax increase at all. And so that goes back, no matter what you say, it's, if we don't have a tax increase. And so I think that's important, because I'm not sure everybody's gonna, the county will be that way or whatever. So, but we will, and I think we need to say that. Don't pay attention to what's said behind the curtain, your taxes, whatever. We're not having a tax increase.
But of course, if your particular property appraisal was higher than the 30% or whatever we're thinking, you're going to
gonna
be
pay a little
paying
bit
higher
more.
taxes.
That's
That's
right.
right,
Yeah,
that's
Your,
right.
your share of it might
But
change
your
a little.
comment is the right one.
Yeah, I think it's important to say that.
And which is minor, I would point out also that $1,000 has to be more than $1,000 to cover the Social Security and
Yeah,
income tax,
right.
whatever we take out of
Right.
that then. So it'll be a little bit more than $1,000 to each person.
Right, right. And we are, we're still getting guidance on how to allocate those dollars. So we'll, as we get that, we will share that with you as we're implementing the budget. But we expect to use those dollars in the way I outlined for you, so.
Alderman Speedy, any questions? Alderman Shore, are you through?
I'm done, yes.
You
thank
through?
I'm sorry.
Yes, and-
I was going to say that the presentation really was very, very good. I have one very minor thing. On page 4, if you look, just regular 4, not IV and everything, down at the bottom on the profile of the city, it says, the city of, on the end of the first paragraph, the city of Franklin is one of the fastest growing communities in the state of Tennessee, and the population increasing almost 70% between the year 2000 and 2010. That is not right. It was not quite 50%. However, if you go back and look at from 2000 to 2017, where we had the last, what do we call it, private?
Special census, yeah.
Special census, yeah, thank you. Then it was approximately 70%.
That's probably where that comes from.
You need to either make that between 2000 and 2017,
17.
or go back and say between 2000 and 2010, it was almost 50%.
And I will
So
tell
you knew that on page 66 there, how many employees we had. So that-
You'd
I
already looked
did
at
read
that?
it somewhere, but,
I will say,
because I
Alderman-
did, actually,
I
I
could have
looked.
just asked her.
No.
I'm sorry, I should have known better.
No, but let me tell you, that is one of the things that over the years has been looked at, and so I did at least read through
Yeah.
somewhere, but saying, because at a certain point, maybe before most of us were in this, those employees,
Yeah.
as you remember, went crazy, yeah.
Yep.
I will say that one of the areas that this was a challenging budget in one major aspect, and that was waiting for information. And we're still waiting,
Yeah.
the tax rate, the initial file came out today. And so we had to present something in front of you. One of those other areas is quite honestly population. The decennial census is complete.
And so,
But we are waiting for what that
Good
number
question.
is from the federal government. And, so we'll make that correction, but we've kept the 70,909 figure because it is the last official governmentally recognized special census figure, even though we all know that we are higher than that, awaiting for the 2020 census number to come out.
yeah, so really, we have that, and we have that to look forward to see what the census is, and then also the thing about the reappraisals, so that's going to be kind of interesting. And of course, we don't know what the sales tax stuff is until after we have finished the budget and everything.
So one other comment, there's a big unknown in this budget, and it has to do with the infrastructure bill that's being considered in Congress. And we don't know what that is, but it's 2 trillion it's going to be something. And so that, a lot of that money.
How does that factor into?
I mean, it's going to be a bit, so we were talking about using some of the money that we got from the first COVID bill to repair water lines and stuff within the city. I'm sure it will be, that's not all it's for, but there could be a huge amount of money available for us to put out in 2021 and beyond to do that infrastructure stuff, which will have just an impact on a lot of things, like even hiring people, and because to have the kind of people the amount of people that we have, if something of any magnitude is passed, and so a lot of eyes are watching.
When as we look at our own capital investment program, there might be things that are well aligned with some of those funding
Absolutely.
opportunities that we hadn't anticipated.
Yes.
We've had more in the local column that could change.
Yeah, absolutely.
We do need to do some bridge repair in Memphis, so.
Yeah,
Gosh.
that's right.
We had a comment about that this morning.
At least the gas is flowing again, so that's good.
Any other questions or comments? Do we have a motion and a proper second? Alderman Peterson, how do you vote?
Yes.
Alderman Shore, how do you vote?
Yes,
Alderman Speedy?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes on this. Now let's go to item 5. It's consideration of orders 2021-16, an ordinance of the city of Franklin, Tennessee, establishing the municipal property tax levy for the fiscal year 2021-2022 and providing an effective date.
So-
Christine, Eric,
Yeah.
Michael?
As we've told you, this ordinance does have in the official attachment the word draft.
Yes.
Because of the information we've told you that we just received today. In order to keep it consistent, though, what is in your budget book and what is a part of this item, and what we would ask you to recommend approval to the board on, is the 2021-16, which is to set a property tax rate for fiscal '22. Once we have the actual rate, we will correct this, and so it will be correct in time for first reading. This is currently written at the .4176 rate because it is simply what we knew at the time.
And again, we expect that to be somewhere in the 32 to 33.
Any questions on this item? The motion would be to approve and forward it to the full board.
So
I'll
moved.
entertain a motion.
so moved.
Proper motion or a second?
Second.
Alderman Peterson, how do you vote?
Yes.
Alderman Shore, how do you vote?
Yes.
Alderman Speedy, how do you vote?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes on this item. Let's go to item 6, which is a consideration of ordinance 2021-17, an ordinance of the city of Franklin, Tennessee to amend Appendix A, Comprehensive Fees and Penalties, Chapter 17, Refuge and Trash Disposal of the City Municipal Code to increase the fees for collection of garbage and refuse.
This is changing one line, which is to change the monthly residential collection rate from $19 to $20.50, as Eric outlined in his presentation of the fiscal '22 budget.
Any questions? Then I'll entertain a motion.
I'm happy to move it.
All right. Alderman
I'll
Speedy.
second.
Oh, Alderman Peterson seconds. Let's do a roll call vote. Alderman Peterson, how do you vote?
Yes.
Alderman Speedy, how do you vote?
Yes.
And Alderman Shore, how do you
Yes.
vote? And the chair votes yes, except my screen went off before I got it. Okay, item 7, consideration of ordinance 2021-18, an ordinance of the city of Franklin, Tennessee to amend Appendix A, Comprehensive Fees and Penalties, Chapter 23, Stormwater Management of the Franklin Municipal Code to increase the equivalent residential utility rate. Any
This-
questions? That's already been covered. Do you want to cover that again, Michael, just briefly?
Just to let you know that the mechanics of this, it again only changes one line, and it increases the non-residential rate from $3.65 per month to $3.65 per month to $3.83 per month. The rest of the code is written so that if you go down to the next line, it gives the small residential percentage and the large residential percentage, and that is based
been
off of
changed.
what that ERU number is. So the only item that needs to change in chapter 23 is that non-residential base ERU rate.
Any questions? I'll entertain a motion of approval and forward this item to the full board. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Proper motions are a second.
Second.
Alderman Peterson, how do you vote?
Yes.
Alderman Shore, how do you vote?
Yes.
Alderman Speedy, how do you vote?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Let's go to item 8 then, which is consideration of resolution 2021-94, resolution of the Board of Mayor and Aldermen for the city of Franklin adopting the estimate of revenues and expenditures for the water and sanitary sewer utility fund for fiscal year 2021-2022, providing an effective date.
This resolution may seem redundant. some ways it is, but it provides what we've always called our belt and suspenders approach regarding your enterprise fund, the water and sewer utility. This is a resolution that we have done for many years and helps just pass the budget through the Comptroller's Office of the State of Tennessee. So although it is included within the budget document, we also have a separate resolution. You will not see this again until public hearing night. So whereas the rest of these we recommend going to the board meeting on May 25th, this would then go on the meeting of June 8th. So therefore, all the public hearings in this resolution are set at the same time.
Any questions? I will entertain a motion to approve and forward to the full board.
So moved.
Second.
Proper motion is second. Alderman Peterson, how do you vote?
Yes.
Alderman Shore, how do you vote?
Yes.
Alderman Speedy, how do you vote?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Let's go to item 9 then, which is monthly reports. Mike? Oh,
Yes. Good afternoon.
there he is. He's behind the screen.
I know, yes.
I couldn't find you, Mike.
For monthly reports, I would like to cover 5 items, and you've actually heard some of this information earlier. From Schedule 1, local sales tax for February was 2.1% less than last year, but year-to-date, the revenue is up 2.4%. There will be only one more month where the city's half share of the additional sales tax goes to the county. For sales starting in April, the half share will come back to the city. And so far, the city's portion toward the county debt has actually been $5.5 million. From Schedules 2 through 5, development fees are generally within 10% up or down of last year. However, road impact fees are down 41%. So we reached out to the B&S department just to see if there was more information. And what we found out from them is they believe it really has just come down to the types of permits that were issued and the fee or the occupancy classification that went with those structures that were permitted. From Schedule 6 through 8, we have seen the impact of COVID on gasoline taxes, hotel motel taxes, and the conference center. And we are awaiting guidance, as Eric said, from the U.S. Treasury to determine if the American Rescue Plan Act can be used to offset these losses. We have also made application this week for the half funds of approximately $4.5 million, so that we're hoping we will have in May, as Eric mentioned. From Schedule 9, we are actually anticipating having an item on grants at your June committee, so we're actually going to have more information at that point. We are also anticipating some additional items in June to have a lease accounting and reporting policy and to update our internal control documentation. And the last item from Schedule 10, this is just a running summary of fund balances until we have the next quarterly report. And the general fund continues to show a surplus, which is higher than typical, and it's primarily because of the 2 grants the city received early in the fiscal year. And we will also have the 3rd quarter report at your June meeting. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any questions of Mike? Any other business to come before the committee? Then I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Proper motion is second. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? I hear none. We are adjourned.